To bring in Muthomi Thiankolu. He's a lawyer. He's joining us by way of phone. Muthomi, good evening. First of all, let me get your reactions on the arrest of David Ndii. There are those who are pointing a finger at politics. There are those who are saying, but when you look at his social media, especially his tweets, they have been quite a little bit alarming, so to speak. What are your thoughts about his arrest?
My own understanding, Linda, is that our constitution, number one, protects free speech.
Okay.
And free speech, my own understanding of the freedom of information and expression and conscience is a freedom to hold and express both palatable and unpalatable thoughts. That freedom includes the freedom to hold ideas and opinions that are not necessarily favorable with the political establishment of the day or necessarily consistent with the state ideology, so that because no cogent explanation has been given, if the reason for his arrest is that he holds the views that the state considers unacceptable, that without more is not a basis for invocation of powers of arrest and whatnot. And when you check our laws, even the law on treason itself, it is only when your expressions are accompanied by an overt act that you're deemed now to have committed an offense. On the question of access to his family and access to advocates, our constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, says in Article 49, paragraph 1, subparagraph C, that an arrested person has the right to communicate with an advocate and other persons whose assistance is necessary. This right cannot be taken away by the state, and it is not within the power of the state to decide which suspect, whatever the nature of the offense you are accused or suspected of committing, the state has no reason, at least not legally speaking, to say that you cannot speak to your advocate and that you cannot speak to your family. As a matter of fact, the Constitution says you also have a right to remain silent. So this idea that people must actually record statements with the police is not a very useful idea. It is a continuation of the old thinking of the old Constitution. You can actually be arrested, put up in a police station, and refuse to utter a word, and that would be within your rights under our Constitution, which is the law of the land. You have the right not to be compelled to make any admission or statement that could be used against you. So in summary, my view is that perhaps our police resources could be used more usefully in this country to pursue real criminals as opposed to people whose views we consider dangerous. Because if the world were to be run by only one particular brand of ideology or views, can you imagine what a boring world it would be if we all shared the same ideology, if we all thought the same way, if we all believed in the same philosophy? I think the essence of the right to freedom of expression, of conscience and opinion is an acknowledgement that a world in which people are forced to subscribe to the ideology of the state or the government of the day is not a world in which life would be worth living. And I would actually believe it would actually be a very boring life anyway.
Muthomi, listen.
Yes.
Okay, I know you've said there's freedom of speech, but all these freedoms have limitations. And I'd like to read something that apparently David Ndii wrote somewhere. And you tell me if that concerns you. You said the opposition is prepared to do everything it takes to attain electoral justice in the country. He says plenty of alarming news will be flying in the next 10 days. Do not succumb to fear or intimidation. Stay sober and vigilant when the time comes. Come out and play your part. Assembly up and swear the people's president. With respect to freedom of speech versus incitement, where does that fall?
It doesn't strike me as anything that should actually be of a major concern to the law. Even if Raila Odinga is sworn by 10 million people, that to me would not make him the president of Kenya. There is a procedure established by our constitution, or now you can swear people. The statement that people should not accept electoral injustice. I don't know how asking people to resist injustice or to resist oppression would be something illegal. It is actually asking people to protect the Constitution. My own view is that maybe the government has been misadvised, and this government seems to have a passion for picking wrong advice. It is not. It is not necessary, in my view. It is a complete waste of state resources.
Yeah.
It is a complete misuse of the police resources in this country to expend those resources pursuing people just because they hold certain intellectual or political views we don't like. And in any event, the government is not going to be popular by invoking the power of the state. So that for me, if the government wants to be popular among Kenyans, then it should render service to them and do things that endear the government to the citizenry. You cannot endear yourself to anyone. Even you, Linda, if I wanted to use the barrel of the gun to force you to like me or to love me, I don't think it's an endeavor that will go very far. So that in my view, maybe this government, as some people say, has a problem of self-esteem. It is, to me, the likes of the government should be following criminals harassing people in the land, the criminals in government that are siphonning our money from the exchequer, and the countless other criminals. But just because people are selling an ideology and about swearing Raila Odinga, he can be thrown by whatever number of people he may call, in my view, that in president. So the government has no reason, at least not from a legal point of view, to fear that if Raila Odinga is sworn by his supporters or whoever, he will become president of Kenya. There is only one way you can become president of Kenya, through an election declared by the IBC, where there is a contest confirmed by the Supreme Court. And I think all the legal motions so far in favor of the government. So I think for me this maybe shows the government is not maybe very sure that even if it has the legal legitimacy, it has the moral and political legitimacy across the country, and that cannot be forced. You cannot force people to like you. You cannot force people to like the government. The most you can do is endear and court and entice them to like you.
Muthomi, listen, so earlier on in this show, I was speaking to Khalifa, who is the chairman of Muhuri, and he was saying, as a country, Kenya is clawing back on the gains on the on the democratic gains that we've had over the last couple of years. And you're saying that looking at what's happening around you, the government seems to be listening to the wrong advice. And today, NASA leader Raila Odinga just said the arrest of Ndii was aimed at intimidating the coalition, curtailing dissent and alternative views. Are we clawing back on the democratic space that the country already has built over the last couple of years? And is this some sort of intimidation from where you sit?
My view is that there has been a consistent trend throughout the political season of the government trying to clamp on political rights. I mean, we've seen people being shot because they object to a certain political formation which represents government. We've seen government take an approach that generally says you cannot hold political rallies that said the opposition, or rather sell the opposition ideology. And for me, the danger, Linda, is that if you read history, all these rights in our constitution, if you read the history of mankind, will come from a very bad situation. There are people who were killed for suggesting that the earth is round. There were people who were killed in human history for merely suggesting that the sun was the center of the solar system and not the earth. And yet, over the time, over the centuries, we have discovered that these people were actually right. There were many people in Kenya who were tortured, detained, and killed for opposing the excesses of the Kanu state in the single-party state days. Yet we all know, even the ardent, even the most ardent supporters of some of the excesses we see today, will agree that there are many things that the Kanu government got wrong, and therefore those who are fighting that system were not entirely misguided characters who didn't know what they were saying. So what I'm saying is the whole idea about freedom of speech is recognition that sometimes people we believe are misguided ideas, we think they are dangerous ideas. Over time, these ideas actually turn out to have been the correct, and the majority was right. And you could list a litany of examples, whether it's from history, from religious books. I mean, people told Pontius Pilate to give us Barabbas.
Okay.
And it mean they were right. People told Aaron, we want you to make a golden calf for us.
Muthomi.
And that was democracy. I'm saying even democracy at its limit. It's not the essence of democracy that we should be shutting alternatives.
Muthomi, hold on. Can you hear me? Listen,
Yes,
I need both of us to listen to what NASA leader Raila Odinga had to say on the quest for electoral justice in the country. Then we can wrap this conversation with you. Could we listen to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Move towards electoral justice is unstoppable. The people of Kenya will not stop until they finally get electoral justice to ensure that each and every ballot cast by the voters counts.
Okay, so Raila Odinga says, Muthomi, that the electoral justice is unstoppable. But then I listened in to President Uhuru Kenyatta on the day he was being sworn in, and he said the electioneering period is over. This is the time for the country to move forward. What are your thoughts?
I think there are two things, the electoral justice and the electioneering period. For me, what is over is the legal aspect of the election. And what should be worrying us is not what Raila Odinga or anyone said, but whether there is merit to it. Anyone who has a good understanding of Kenyan history will understand that almost every one of our elections since 1963 are there problems. Almost every one of them. 1988, we had the Mulolongo election that had many problems. Before that, we had the so-called Little General election in 1982, which was aimed at purging people who were perceived to have supported the coup. If you come to the 1992 election, it was controversial. It was challenged by Matiba and Orengo and many other people. The documents are out there in the public domain. If you come to the 1997 election, it was also a contentious election. There were even election petitions, again drawn out on technicalities. The only election we've had actually since 1963 that did not seem to have serious contestation is the 2002 election. So for me, the question is, when Raila Odinga or like-minded people say that we have problems about electoral justice, then the discussion should be whether these allegations are completely outlandish, or is it actually true? Because in Kenya, one of the tragedies I always keep saying in your show is we love to make clever but dishonest legal arguments. Arguments that sound very good from a technical legalistic point of view, but they're actually just looking at shifted truths, half-truths that when you package, pockets of half-truths, you build a whole narrative that appears true. But when you go beyond the surface, you actually discover that narrative is not even authentic. And for me, if all the elections we've held since 1963, only one seems to have had broad consensus across all political divides, then the question is, what should we do as a country so that going forward we outgrow this problem where a party who loses an election feels that they have been cheated. Speaking as an ordinary Kenyan, I look forward to a day when the loser will be the very first person to shake hands with the supposed winner and say, on this one, we believe you won properly and we are happy, let us move forward and build our country. But we are not going to do that if we pretend that because there is a court order that says it was valid, because it was struck out for this technicality, because of the clever, dishonest legal arguments, in my view, are not going to take this discussion anywhere, and our country will always be.
Okay, Muthomi, listen, you've said that the government seems to be listening to the wrong advice. In under a minute, if you had to advise this government in terms of how it's carrying out its activities, what would you tell the government?
Let the political opposition be, unless what they are doing is clearly a breach of the law, just because they are doing things that appear to embarrass the government, just because they are doing things that appear to question the legitimacy of the government. Such motions, in my view, are within our constitutional framework. It is only people who break positive laws of the land that should be the subject of the interest of the police. And in my view, we should use our police service not to fight political battles. We should use powers of the state not to fight political enemies of the state, but to deliver service to the people of Kenya. That's the advice I would give them, and the government should have a thick skin. It should be able to live with criticism. It should be able to live with people who don't like it. I mean, there is no government which is liked by every citizen. There is no government which is popular in every corner of the country. And for me, instead of forcing people or forcing yourself to be popular through the coercive powers of the state, the government should actually be reaching out to the citizens who don't seem to like it and finding out why is it these people feel that the government does not serve their best interest, and see what engagement they can have. And that engagement is not always necessarily an engagement that so-and-so must join government or so-and-so must become president. At the end of the day, the average person just wants to know, can the local health center in my place serve me if I am sick? Can the road take me from point A to B if I need to travel? Does my child have any fair chance of securing employment? Those are the small things that worry the average citizen, and actually the average citizen wouldn't care who is president. Speaking for myself, I actually do not care who becomes the president of Kenya, whether it's Raila Odinga, whether it's Uhuru Kenyatta or whoever, as long as I'm being left in peace to do my thing and to work and to try and build my life. I actually don't care.
Muthomi, as long as your life goes on, as long as you can put food on the table, as long as your family is safe, that's all. Muthomi Thiankolu, a lawyer, thank you so much for speaking to us and for being part of the big story this evening. We also spoke to Halif Khalifa, who's a human rights activist and chair of Muhuri here on the big story. We're focusing on the arrest of David Ndii. We do know right now that the Director of Public Prosecutions, Keriako Tobiko, has directed that he be released on a police bond. We do know that he's also been released. We're hoping to speak to Edwin Sifuna,